And so we are active. So we're gonna get straight into it. Discussion with that dude, discussion with them dudes. Be easy, that dude. My bro BT coming in. And the conservative civil war, is this what's really going on? Let's see what secular talk Kyle Kalinske has to say, and then we will chime in from there. Let me know if you can hear this as well with the audio. So give me uno momento. So I'm gonna hit a pause on that.
He does that is to bring up that, like, I don't trust this guy, and I think this guy is CIA, and he's like a gatekeeper for the conservative movement that says you can go this far and no further. And there's always been a little bit of friction there, a little bit of beef there, and Fuentes has always taken pot shots at Tucker. Well, Tucker apparently is more plugged in than people think. He's aware of this, and he's talking to Candace Owens here. And I should also point out that Nick recently had an interview with Candace Owens. Candace invited Nick on her show, and Fuentes feels like it was kind of a hit job, right? And he didn't like the way that interview went. Now, I didn't watch that whole interview, so I have no idea if that's what it was or not, but Candace and Tucker both clearly are frustrated with Nick. And so in this conversation...
And I'm frustrated with all of them, including Kyle Kalinske, but I would say that Kyle Kalinske has more integrity than them, at least on the surface level. All of these people are political hacks, and they are more worried about punditry and content more so than change. None of them really stand for anything but their bank account. And this is just my opinion. I am giving really, it may sound biased, but it's actually going to be objective. And that's why I'm reacting to this content by Kyle Kalinske. They say a dead clock is right twice a day. So I think many of what he will say in this specific video will be right, but there's a lot of things that he's wrong about, because he'll act like he's a super lefty, progressive, but that doesn't really mean anything. All that means is that he's a Democrat, and he's a different flavor of Democrat, just like they have orange chicken, lemon chicken, barbecue chicken, grilled chicken. It's just different ways of cooked chicken. So him saying he's a progressive and lefty, all you need to worry about is that he's a Democrat, and he's just trying to dress up different ways to try to make the Democrats seem more palatable. But to my chicken analogy, it's just chicken. You know what I mean? You've had, so I mean, that's all he is, because he's trying to steer you towards back onto that Democratic plantation. And a lot of Republicans and conservatives like to say, get off the Democrat plantation, but all they're trying to do is steer you towards the Republican plantation. And what I'm saying is there's other options. If we're sticking with the plantation options, there's other plantations that you can entertain, or you can say, hey, how about we just unite and build our own institutions, plantation type institutions. And I'm speaking of that in the definition of the word, omitting the slavery aspect of it, just using the word plantation, and in this specific analogy, right? All the people that say get off of the plantation, but it's like, yeah, you're just trying to steer someone to another one, right? They'll say, oh, we believe in small government, and then they'll keep talking about government overreach and praise Trump for federalizing things. So I kind of went all over the place with that, but I just want to set the stage to know, like, I'm not one of these Democrat bootlickers, and I'm not one of the Republican bootlickers. Both parties are abysmal. Both parties are abhorrent. We're supposed to be calling them both out. They're supposed to work for us. So why would I favor one or the other when both of them are being very derelict and dysfunctional with their duties? I can't praise the Republican dysfunction. I can say, hey, I agree with this specific policy, this specific policy. I disagree with this one. I can't, so that's why I don't use any of the labels. I'm not Republican, I'm not conservative, I'm not liberal, I'm not Democrat. Can I align with some people who hold those titles and say they agree with this policy. Well, yeah, I agree with this policy because it's practical and pragmatic, not because it's a tie to a political party. Everyone should be independent. Even if you vote Republican, I believe people should be registered as independent because both parties are supposed to be vying and competing for your vote. So I don't want to just come in already wearing a Republican or a Democrat shirt, you know. So if they're doing something that I agree with, then I'll vote Democrat. The Republicans, same thing. Green Party, Libertarians, same thing. Because I'm not tied to a specific party or ideology. You're supposed to be tied to policy. And, you know, many times people don't allow people to fully flush out their policy because they're already playing for the home team. So before I continue the video, did you want to chime in on anything that I just said on that opening salvo?
Yeah, that was excellent. And a good video too, because this is everything that I predicted would happen the day after the election. Would be a massive fight for who's going to gain control of MAGA after Trump, and obviously everybody needed to uh, get on board quickly with gathering their following in flocks to lead to lead. So, um, Kyle is one of those edgy liberals. It's like you got your regular liberal, and then you have your edgy liberal that mentions Medicare for all or Bernie. But you still go to the same Hamptons restaurants and eat $200 steaks.
Bingo. Still at the same wine caves, right? Still won't call out Gavin Newsom. And if they do call out Gavin Newsom, it will be very tepid at best, and there will be more praising of Gavin Newsom. So yeah, no, I totally concur with what you're saying, and that's why I don't really see Kyle Kalinske as any different than Charlie Kirk, because Kyle won't be as abrasive in his anti-black bigoted language, but given the opportunity, Kyle would sit down with him, right? But Kyle wouldn't do a sit down with Tariq. Though people will call Tariq, he's a race baiter and he's always complaining. Well, why won't you sit down with him and just destroy him in a debate? But they won't even sit down with them. But they'll sit down with a flaming bigot. How many times they talk about Israel? Israel is committing a genocide. And then how many genocidal Zionists will they sit down with? Tariq hasn't genocided anyone. Jason Black, Tim Black, the Black Authority. I mean, there's plenty out there, big and small, channels that you can get in contact with. Suddenly they can never get in contact with them. But Kyle knows all of the biggest to get in contact with. PBD, Charlie Kirk, just list continues. And, like you said, it's supposed to be edgy for him to talk to them, but it's not edgy to talk to any Black American freedman that's B1. You won't talk to us. Like we're not going to call you any names or anything like that. But see, they don't want to legitimize our voices or demands. And not to say that we need them to. The only reason I'm bringing this up is to point out the hypocrisy, because Kyle is supposed to be one of those allies, but he cares more about undocumented illegal immigrants and foreign conflicts than he does Black people. Democrats will say Black people are the base of the party, but now they don't even mention them because they brought in so many illegal immigrants that they say, I think this should be enough for us to shift the focus. So now the civil rights issues is supposed to be focused on non-citizens, but they still want Black people to like be the moral compass to crash out because we have a legitimate grievance, and these other groups, they made a voluntary choice. Even if you say, look how they're being treated, is like no one forced them to come here, and actually they will be willing to pay them to leave. And they keep comparing it to slavery, which is super disrespectful. And I even had to tell some Black people that, because I get it. Like you say the word, but slaves weren't paid. And they keep saying they just want to work. They just want to work and get paid. Slaves didn't have an option of getting paid. So even bringing up that word, but it just sounds more controversial than saying indentured servitude, right? Because that's more what it's closer to, right? Indentured servants weren't, it wasn't a lifetime sentence, right? Your kids weren't born indentured service. As with a slave kids were born into slavery. So just even saying that, these people come across the border illegally and they're rewarded with birthright citizenship. That's not fucking slavery. So it's like, I think people, especially the America First people, should be like checking people on it. But because it has to do with, Black American freedmen, like they don't truly give a flying flip. But before I start the video, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, the biggest reason they don't highlight certain Black Americans, freedmen, on their shows is because you're unpredictable. There's no
Bingo, that wild card.
There's right. There's a question. Like, I am very comfortable speaking with you guys because I've listened for so long before I spoke, and that's why a lot of people.
I think you kind of cut out a little bit.
Am I here?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
But they do a lot of speaking before listening. They don't know who they're talking about, and it's one of those things where you have a Tariq Nasheed on your show, you don't know what he's going to say, and he's not going to go by script, either with you, Naeem, Marcel Dixon, or even Sabby Sabs. There's no telling where the conversation is going to go. So,
and none of those people you named will get invited on. And salute to everybody you named, because I rock with all of them. But none of those people, like I said, okay, if you don't like Tariq, because Tariq has been on mainstream people, and it's not about liking people, right? Because the thing is, they'll say that what they're saying is too radical or it's a lie, and well, bring them on and debunk it. If what he's saying is this should be a chance. You know how many millions of views you will get if you can debunk Tariq, own Tariq, so and so wrecked Tariq. Like you would go viral. If this is about money and content, your content would shoot through the roof. So why won't they do it? You can say, oh no, he's demanding money. I know brother Naheem will do it for free. He'll come cook you for free. Marcel will cook you for free. I'm not saying like these brothers are broke or that they have nothing to do with their time. I'm not saying that. These are astute people and productive citizens in society. But what I'm saying is they are so passionate about standing up for American freedmen issues and American issues. They will come. Hey, you don't need to write them a big check. I suggest that you do, because you'll get a lot of content off it. But we're just talking about the battle of intellect and wits. Hey, I'll come cook you for free. It's just like when people grew up in the hood and they would play ball, and they'll say so and so on this block is better than you. We wouldn't say, oh, let's go play him in a game, but he got to pay me first. No, it's like he's better than me. I'm finna go over to his court, or we can meet at a neutral court and we'll play. And you feel me? I'll ball on this dude. He's not better than me. That's how we are. But some other people, they always try to look at the profit motive, the political motive behind it. They always talk about platforming. We can't platform Tariq, but they'll platform Nick Fuentes. There's no videos of Tariq saying half the stuff that Nick Fuentes said, but you got even the people who are supposed to be allies, i.e. Glenn Greenwald, Kyle Kalinske, any of these people, Cenk Uygur, right? All of these people are supposed to be allies, but they'll either side with them or they'll kind of soft pedal what they say unless they say something about their group, right? If Nick says
Right.
something about Jews, it's like, oh my God, he's anti-Semitic. It's like he went on a 4-hour rant about black people and did a 30-minute rant about Jews, and somehow we should focus on that. He said this about illegal immigrants. He did a 5-hour stream talking about black IQs in Africa. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
but so that's why I don't see any of these people as any different, in my estimation. They may be different in ideology, but if you ask Kyle Kalinske about reparations, his answer is the same as Charlie Kirk. If you ask Cenk Uygur about reparations, his answer is the same as Matt Walsh. So how are they really any different to me? But I'll play a
No,
little bit of and we can.
that's
Oh
spot
yes.
on.
All right, let me play some of the video.
They're going to go after him. So let me play you this, and then Nick responds, and oh man, does it get fun. So let's watch.
Has it occurred to you that, and I just want to say, I haven't watched a lot of Nick Fuentes in my life at all. But what I've seen, the guy's very talented. Like, just as a well, let me just say this, as someone who's talked to cameras his whole life, it is very hard to sit and just like riff for 20 minutes. And I think it's an amazing skill, and he has that skill. But I also have noticed that his targets.
Look at the meat writing. You see what I'm saying? And look, this is not to just bring. I'll just bring up Tariq because it's he's a household name. Tariq is funnier than Nick Fuentes, smarter than Nick Fuentes, more charismatic than Nick Fuentes. So when he's talking about talent, I mean, Jason Black, the Black Authority, doesn't even show his face on camera. Funnier than Nick Fuentes, more intellectually sound and articulate than Nick Fuentes. I can go down the list. There's Black Alpha Network, Marcel Dixon, Brother
Nope.
Naheem. So I could just keep going down the list of people that are more talented than Nick Fuentes, but he's making it seem like he's doing such a great feat that all he does is dress up in a suit behind a green screen and rail about black people all day and IQs and use occasionally big words. And because, oh, he's young and maybe you think at that age you weren't as bright as him, that doesn't mean anything. There's dudes in China that are like blowing him out the water in IQ. But if I bring that up, then what are they going to say? Well, they're not Anglo. Yeah, but I thought this was about IQ, right? Their IQ is
Right.
blowing yours out the water. So why? All right, fine. We're the dumb savages and shit. All right, let's talk about these Chinese people who are not the dumb savages, right? Your IQ pales in comparison to them. Then they start bringing up others. They just start bringing up random ad hominem stuff. But it's like, I thought your focus was IQ. Now you're moving the goalpost, And then he's talking about how talented he is. Well, I'll bring up someone from an immigrant background that has an accent that's more talented than Nick Fuentes. And then they'll say, but they're an immigrant. Like, but I thought this was about IQ, and you guys coined the term model minority. So the goalpost will just keep moving once you just take black people out the equation. If you just concede, you know what, you're right. Black people are dumb, savage, low IQ, just retards, right? So let's just stop talking about those retards. Let's start talking about the Asians. Let's compare you guys to the top 8, and then suddenly it's a meltdown. They revert to go back to start talking about black people again, or they try to find a way to disparage a culture that they were just praising. You said they were the model minorities. Now you're trying to find ways to pick apart their culture. Does that make any sense, bro?
No, none at all. And it goes to the fact of what we've been talking about is the battle for the biggest influencer. Tucker's stock is kind of dying out, and it's not as big as it was when he left Fox. Nick Fuentes is the only reason he's super angry at Candace and Dave Smith and some of the others is because he wants to be the head of basically the anti-Israel movement. And when other people criticize that and they're interviewed on big platforms, that angers him. He admitted it in his in some of his monologues and speeches when he's not ranting on other things. And what it boils down to is the battle between him and Tucker. Nick is just jealous that he was not in that circle of elites that he wanted to be in when he went to Boston University and when he went to the elite East Coast places, and he was not accepted. Being a Chicago boy from the Midwest, he didn't fit in with the elite East Coast circles. You know, that's what it boils down to. Had he met a nice Jewish girl, we'd never even known who Nick Fuentes was. He wouldn't have a shtick to go on, you know?
Hey, you summed that up real smooth. I was going to add to it. I'm going to just let the video rock out.
Are all people who are sincere, non-crazy, non-hateful opponents of neocon politics.
Right.
So you have to kind of wonder about that. So Nick Fuentes is like, oh, I don't like the neocons. But then his targets are J.D. Vance, Joe Kent. He got involved in Joe Kent's campaign with a super. Oh, yes. You, me. And it's like, what is that?
Dave Smith.
Dave
I asked him about that because that's a question that I had. So I did the right thing by asking him to his face. What's up with this? Like, why do you attack Dave Smith? You say that like your biggest critique is that America's being controlled by Israel. Then you have Dave Smith, who has been such a sound voice. And by the way, opposite experience with Dave Smith. I have my podcast. He's a fantastic human being.
Dave Smith is one of the nicest people.
Fantastic
ever.
human.
Yes.
And so I judge people according to my experiences with them. And so Nick is being judged according to my experience with him. And
but like, what is this?
I don't get
Where
it.
does
I don't
the funding come from? I probably shouldn't even say this, but the only reason I know who he is because someone sent me a video a few years ago of him attacking me. And I was like, so I'm looking at this. And I'm like, well, first of all, this kid's really talented, like legit. And I can assess that just having done the job for so long. So I was like, wow, lots of talent, native talent.
Once again, here comes the meat glazing, but also the lying. To your point of Tucker Carlson, his stock dropping, he's still a staple, but his stock is starting to, it should be plummeting, but it's just consistently dropping. First of all, he's lying, right? This is the second time how immensely talented he's talking about Nick Fuentes, but he doesn't say what his talents are outside of being able to look at a screen and talk for a long time. That's not a talent, right? There's a bunch of people that stay on the corner. There's some liberals that are on the corner yelling all day about various social issues, right? Does that mean they're talented because they're doing it all day and some of them are getting recorded? He's not really speaking and saying, you know, he's just so profound with his words and his delivery is so eloquent and his IQ is so high and he's produced this. He hasn't pointed to any results that Nick has done, just that he can look at a camera and talk for a long time. And then he also is lying saying, I mean, I hadn't heard anything about him, but he's talking about how talented he was. How the hell would you know how talented he was? You know what I mean? It's right. Like this guy named Michael Jordan. I don't know who the hell he is, but I know that dude's the GOAT. It's like, you just said you don't know anything about him, you know? So, but Jason Black, the Black Authority, did a phenomenal broadcast. He breaks it down even more in depth. I would have played some of his video, but I think he actually did play some of Kyle Kalinski's video. So his video, since he does a real in-depth breakdown, is about 2 hours ish, because he does a call-in show after where live viewers call in, and this video is only about 20-ish minutes. So I just opted to react to this one, but I would recommend that people look up the video from Jason Black. I might drop it in the chat after the video, but let me play a little bit more of this.
And he's attacking my dad as a CIA, his dad's in the CIA or whatever. And I'm like,
I judge people according to my experiences with them. And so Nick is being judged according to my experience with him. And
but like, what is this?
I don't get
Where
it.
does
I don't
the funding come from? I probably shouldn't even say this, but the only reason I know who he is because someone sent me a video a few years ago of him attacking me. And I was like, so I'm looking at this. And I'm like, well, first of all, this kid's really talented, like legit. And I can assess that just having done the job for so long. So I was like, wow, lots of talent, native talent.
I had to stop it again because once you play it back and maybe you want to chime in too, he said a few years ago it's 2025. So a few years ago was 2022. Bro,
Right.
come on, bro. Let's just say 2020. Nick Fuentes has been around since before then. You mean to tell me that?
2016.
Yeah, no, he said he said he only heard about him a few years ago.
Right.
A few years ago would be 2022. It's like Nick Fuentes was on the scene. I remember Kanye was around him. I remember, like, wasn't Trump around him? So it's like to act like you've only heard about him a few years ago, and I'm not even in these conservative spaces. I'm not a groyper. I don't listen to Nick Fuentes, but I know that he's been around. He's been on like different shows, like Fresh and Fit, who are both Sambos and Tethers, but he's been even in different like manosphere spaces. He's been in conservative spaces. In order for him to be banned in this many places, his name had to ring some type of bells, right? And especially with Fox News and Tucker coming from that world where they recruit some of these low level influencers and bring them to prominence by bringing them on Fox News. So for him to just act like he doesn't know, then he's saying native talent, meaning like, okay, American talent. Why won't he just say that instead? He's trying to say native to, try to make it sound, more exotic, but he's an American first talent, but he doesn't even want to say America. That's fine. But he's part of the people that were pushing the whole model minority and, basically H-1B visas are a godsend. But now you're talking about native talent. Like, what the hell?
Right.
You're from a freaking family dynasty that wasn't using native talent. They were going to other underdeveloped, what people would call third world countries, and exploiting their labor and their resources using non-native talent. So just this whole little revisionist, whiny little rant is just pathetic, bro. Did you have anything to say before I continue?
Yeah. Nick Fuentes is super talented at taking Kevin Samuels and Minister Louis Farrakhan's material and spinning it to 20-some-year-old white kids. And if you go
Facts.
back, to a lot of his majority of his content, Kevin Samuels and the Manosphere said it years ago. Actually, Kevin Samuels, his content was a long time ago. And then obviously Farrakhan has been around for years. He would have been well aware of Farrakhan living in Chicago. Farrakhan actually spoke at St. Sabina when he was cut out and being censored from Facebook, and he spoke at a big Catholic church in Chicago. So that's why I laugh. I said, this guy's literally converted white kids to the NOI, and they don't even know about it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right in what you're saying. Because even now he hates black people, but he was using a lot of black vernacular in Ebonics when he goes on his spiels because he's trying to appeal to the young white guys, and the young white guys, they're listening to the NBA young boys and Dirks and EBK J-Bos and stuff like that. So he's going to hate us, but still use our vernacular. He was talking about Candace Owen. She just wants to get the bag. Like, when have you ever heard, people growing up in this preppy area going to Boston talking about getting the bag? They'll say something different, meaning the same thing. And that's what we always do, right? I'm going to get a high paying job. And somebody will be like, well, man, I'm trying to get the bag. You're both saying the same thing. Why didn't he use the super Boston U vernacular? Because he's trying to appeal to the, young white guys, because a lot of boomers, even if they agree with his anti-blackness, they're turned off by a lot of his, flaming anti-Semitism. That, so some people, they're like, go ahead, stick it to the blacks. But then when he starts talking about this kind of master race and, it's the Jews, that's the only issue that they have with them. So I would just tell people to just come out and say that. Don't try to get me to gang up on Nick Fuentes because he hates Jewish people, because I don't like him because he hates black people. And if he hates black people, I know that he's a hateful person. So that's a deal breaker for me. But for others, his anti-blackness is not a deal breaker. It's just only when he brings up the Jews. And then, when it was the H-1B, he was talking about, Indians. And, there was the whole shit where people calling them Pajit and street shitters and all this shit. You can thank people like Nick Fuentes and stuff like that, because on one hand, hey, these are the model minorities. And then when they feel like they're overtaking something, then they become sand niggers. It's like, hold on, why are you disrespecting? I don't like Vivek racist Swami, but why are you calling him that now? When he was railing against black people, he was the best. Then he starts calling white people mediocre and saying, you guys watch too much Saved by the Bell, right? And you guys should have been praising Screech instead of Slater. Then suddenly the America First maggots are like, he can't say that to us and go back to India's. But you weren't you weren't saying that when he was like trashing on black people and BLM and fatherless homes. Then suddenly you were cheering them on. So it's just all over the place with these people that are acting like they are truly America First or standing for something. And I stand behind Nick because of his hateful rhetoric. But what has Nick Fuentes actually done? Not a damn thing. All he's done is made content. He went and graduated from these prestigious universities to make content about the Jews and blacks.
Didn't even graduate.
Oh, damn, a dropout? That's even worse. Why is no one talking about that culture and who raised them, and degeneracy and failure, But I guess it's only reserved for certain groups. So let's just commence.
And he's attacking my dad as a CIA is dad.
Is that America's being controlled by Israel. Then you have Dave Smith, who's been such a sound voice. And by the way, opposite experience with Dave Smith. I have my podcast. He's a fantastic human being.
I judge Dave people. Smith is one of the nicest people.
Fantastic
ever.
Human.
Yes.
And so I judge people according to my experiences with them. And so Nick is being judged according to my experience with him. And
but like, what is this?
I don't get
Where
it.
does
I don't
the funding come from? I probably shouldn't even say this, but the only reason I know who he is because someone sent me a video a few years ago of him attacking me. And I was like, so I'm looking at this. And I'm like, well, first of all, this kid's really talented, like legit. And I can assess that just having done the job for so long. So I was like, wow, lots of talent, native talent. And he's attacking my dad as a CIA, his dad's in the CIA or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's no, untrue. And my father dies, and I learn, actually, yeah, was involved in that world.
That's already hilarious. He's attacking me saying my dad's in the CIA. I'm like, bro, that's not even true, bro. And then my dad dies, and I'm like, oh, damn, it was true, bro. Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Now, also, Tucker is full of shit. Tucker knew before his dad died, he knew he was in the CIA. The idea that he didn't know that is fucking preposterous. Preposterous. In fact, he knew it his whole fucking life. I'll show you a video in a little bit that proves that he knew this all fucking along. But here he's playing dumb as if he didn't know that. Because now Tucker knows that the CIA, even in right-wing circles, the CIA is viewed as, they fucking suck. They're full of shit. They cause more problems than they're worth, right? They do illegal things all the time. Even in the right-wing world, they look at it like, oh, that's the deep state. They're causing the problems, right? And so now Tucker knows that, so he's playing coy, and he's going, oh, I didn't even know my dad was in the CIA.
Completely shocked by it. So no one has to believe me, but that's just a fact.
Right.
This was in March of this year. And I'm like, well, why?
He said no one has to believe him. Well, I don't believe him because I'm sure Kyle is going to play a video. Nick had already played a video, but even without the video, we live in the information age, so you can look it up. So I have a different approach with this. Clearly, most of Tucker's audience is white males. I'm sure that he has at least a significant amount of younger people, but I think it's mostly probably middle age and up, with some young people growing. I don't get how people could just see what people will tell black people is like, you guys praise degeneracy and you guys don't hold each other accountable and all this other type of stuff. And when people do something, where's the accountability and personal responsibility and all this stuff, right? And they talk about truth and all this stuff. Here, Tucker is clearly lying, right? But people will still think they won't call him out for the lie, and then they'll start to try to justify the lie. But then if I do that with anything, which I don't really know, I don't feel the need to do that, but then that will become black culture. Well, you guys just are defending people because they're black, and see, that's part of the culture. But Tucker is clearly lying right here, and I haven't heard any prominent right winger calling him out for this. Kyle Kalinske isn't a right winger. I've heard black commentators call Tucker out, but outside of Nick, who was just going nuclear, but he's in his own lane. Where are the other people? You don't even need to agree with Nick. You can say, I don't like Nick Fuentes, but Tucker lied right here. Where the integrity of the America First people? And then they'll start harkening back to, well, Tucker made a good speech at Turning Point USA, so that's why. It's like, okay, that probably was a great speech that he made. And then he told a lie. I can give a grand speech at your daughter's graduation, and then I can go out and start calling her slurs and epithets. Is that, are you going to say, yeah, but that was a great speech? No, you're not even gonna be thinking about the speech because you have to address the issue at hand. The issue at hand is that he's lying through his teeth. Where is the accountability from his supporters? What do you got to say to that, BT?
Yeah, you know, it, you would have known he was telling a fib or lying if most of the people watched the whole entire Putin interview when Putin called him out on it for him trying to join the CIA.
Damn,
He
I had
laughed and
forgot
had
about
a
that.
smirk. So
I forgot
it was
about
called.
that. Putin called him to his face.
Yeah, so this has been called out before. I liked Tucker Carlson's anti-intervention with Russia, Israel, and a few other things that he said. The social aspect of it, I'm tired of it. And that's the problem with Tucker, is now he's gone into the social media influencer crap when they're talking about, the woke thing or blacks or IQ or the uh, LGBTQ community, and all that's not Tucker's wheelhouse, and he's entering it, which to me now he's lost credibility. I'm not interested into hearing him talk about the social aspects of that of the of basically the U.S. was very.
You kind of cutting it out.
But that's I enjoyed the content of his global news and foreign affairs knowledge, his commentating on social policy and woke culture issues is stupid to me. That's where he loses credibility.
Yes, I concur, because he's not speaking from a place of experience himself. It's just as a spectator and observer, right? So as much as he can speak up for the working class, he can't speak for the working class. And that's where too many in the working class get confused, because they'll see someone in the elite circles of society speaking to their issues so they understand me. But just like you said, they're all going to these same swanky wine caves, right? Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell will be at each other's throat and then partying at the same venues or invited to the same parties. So they're getting your neighbors or your fellow countrymen to hate, despise, and have disdain for one another. Meanwhile, all that they are doing is just a lot of political theater where they're all hunky dory and it's all good with each other. So uh, many of these people are the same, like the Kyle Kalinskis, the Tucker Carlsons. Maybe not these two specifically, but there's a lot of bigoted people who they know that they make bigoted, racist, hateful content. And as long as they're not targeting their demographic specifically, people just be like, live and let live. But when I say that, would it, okay, cool. Well, if it's that, then you know, live and let live with the Zionists and the genocide. Oh no, that's the red line. You know what I mean? Live and let live with Trump and what he wants to do with ICE and all this stuff. Oh no, that's a red line. So when people have a red line, that they'll be willing to be adamant and say, no, this is not acceptable. But when it's happening to, Black Americans specifically, it's just like, well, you have to forgive and you have to turn the other cheek. But that's not what you're doing. That's not what you're taught to do. That's not what you would tolerate. So why are you telling me to tolerate? I know why. So it's a rhetorical and a facetious question. But now people are just like, nah, I'm not. I'm not siding with this. So if it's a Jewish issue, no one would have a non-Jewish people speaking for that issue and to say that this is the sole like the sole sentiment of this group, right? So people will do the same thing with the working class. And when people say working class, they're really talking about white people, even though they're not the only working class people. But let's just go with that. When people say the working class, it would only make sense from someone from that economic background, from that class tax bracket to speak. Instead, you got so Tucker Carlson is speaking for the rich, but he's also speaking for the poor. Does that make any sense to you? Because if that's the case, why can't the poor speak for the rich?
Right, right. And that's what, and what you're mentioning about is the working class. That's why that the third party struggle is because the people that are at the forefront of it aren't working class or even have ever worked a working class job. They've never worked with their hands before. If you're an intellectual and you've been to the university, that's great. You've taught class. I look at the people that want to represent the working class, and they're all from academia. None of them have ever worked. So that's why I think just a new party altogether needs to be put together.
Yes, no, I agree. And it's not Elon's party, because all Elon is going to do is basically more crony capitalism. So I don't even know why any specifically white American male, especially anyone of the working class, would be glazing Elon. Elon has actively, he's always seeking out more immigration, right? And not for the benefit of the country, for the benefit of his corporations, right? So when he wants to hire a staff at Tesla, he's not looking for native talent like Tucker's talking about. He's looking globally. This is even what Elon said. So that's fine for Elon, but where does that leave us? You see? And then he
Right.
comes over here and relies on our government subsidies to boost his company. He's literally always begging to the government, doesn't believe in reparations, thinks those are a handout, even though it's a debt owed for services rendered in unpaid labor. But no one owes him to give him hundreds of millions and billions for SpaceX. He's not owed that. And he's not even the one building it. All he does is use American money, and then that money stretches further because he spends it on outsourcing and advocating for more foreign talent where they get paid a decent wage, but it's not an American wage. They're okay with it because they can send a bunch of money back. He gets his stuff, and then he can be held as a genius, and putting them in the same breath as some of the historical geniuses who didn't have AI and chat GBT at their disposal. So how much of a genius is he really, right? He's a straight degenerate, right? He has what, like 13 kids? How many different baby mamas? I don't like Obama, but if that was Obama, what would they be calling him? Right?
Oh
He's not,
man.
yeah, he's not, there's no possible way that he can be in the home raising every one of those kids, but no one cares. Then they pivot and say, well, he has money. So does Future. Future is a rapper that has like 10 plus kids, and that's considered black culture. But the women are lining up to bust it open for him. Like the women are not oppressed. Like they knew that he had 5 kids, and they're like, here, give me a 6. They knew that he had 6, said, give me a 7. Knew that you get the point. But that's considered black culture, and then people consider Elon white, right? He's white, no, unequivocally. But him going out and spreading the seed out of wedlock, isn't this the whole shtick of the white community, having kids out of wedlock? Suddenly, when it comes to Elon, no one mentions that. There's nothing conservative about that. But he's your conservative leader. If he starts a party, you're going to go after the guy who has a bunch of baby mamas everywhere, and he's not raising the kids in the home. He's just throwing money around. They're being raised by nannies and in non-American citizens, which, hey, that's fine for him. What the hell about that is America first? What the hell about that would make you think that he's going to be the leader of a party? But people will say, why drive a Tesla? Okay. What does that have to do with anything that I just said, bro? So I don't get why. I take it off black people because I'm facetiously saying this, right? But we're supposed to be the low IQ savage thugs, right? So why can't you high IQs figure this out, right? Don't expect the black people to figure it out. We're too low IQ. We're too retarded to figure this out. Why haven't the high IQ whites figured this out? Why haven't the high IQ Asians figured this out? And if they have figured it out, that's even worse because you know what's going on and you're not doing anything about it. You're blaming George Floyd, who's been dead for years, and meanwhile, Elon, Jeff Bezos, and all these other people are just picking your pockets dry. You know what I mean? Also, that they can have a fifth yacht in their 27th vacation property.
Right. Right. I mean, that's spot on to summarize that clip, because I mean that's the people you just highlighted in that clip that we just watched are the protectors and gatekeepers of their spaces. All the algorithms favor those 3 people, and obviously, hundreds of others that control the whole conversation. So that's an excellent point.
Yes, and then people like me and you who are of the class that they claim to be speaking. See, they're speaking to us, right? They're speaking about us, but we can never let them speak for us. We can never concede to the fact that they're speaking for us. All they're doing is speaking about us. How can they really speak for you when they don't know what you've been through? They've never walked a day in your shoes. Hey, maybe you grew up with a silver spoon. I didn't. I've been homeless before, so I can go down the list of heinous things that happened to me, systemic things, things that were self-inflicted that still trace back to some type of systemic issue. And I'm not saying this to be have a pity party. I'm saying this in terms of relatability. I could speak to issues, and certain people from that background could relate to it. Tucker Carlson can listen, but he can't relate. So when he gives advice, his advice is going to be based on his experience, and is most likely going to be something that I can't relate to. I can listen to it, you know, it may be something that I can take heed to, but it's not truly a person that I can connect with. The only way you can connect is if you've been around for a significant amount of time, you listened, you're empathetic, and you're willing to be led by someone other than your own ego, or your, basically your own whatever intellectual prowess, right? Because if I go into someone else's space, I could say, yeah, I'm way smarter than this person, but I'm in a unfamiliar territory, right? So I'm gonna kind of let them lead the way and, tell me about things about themselves, what uh makes them uncomfortable. You see what I'm saying? It's just kind of like a
Yeah.
respect type of thing. But they want to come to our issues, our communities, our spaces, and try to lead the way. But it's like, you know, you're not of this class bracket, you're not of this echelon, you're not of this community demographic. So you can't really lead the way. You should be listening all the way. Or, people believe in 80-20, right? So you should be talking 20% of the time and listening 80% of the time. And the 20% of your talking should be to understand the 80% of what I'm talking about. If you're trying to communicate and connect, if you're just trying to control, then you will be talking 80% of the time, because you want yourself to be the dominant voice, and basically the prevailing perspective. But then you didn't learn anything. All you did was just impose what you already thought and what you already knew. So is this about progress, or is this about kind of promulgating whatever, whatever you want to put out there, which is really not connecting or communicating, right? It's just, kind of just beating around the bush.
Right, right. Did you want to hit up your list of the topics? I
Yeah,
know that topic right there. We just covered 2 or 3 of those things in your list about the influencers and the and the and
exactly.
the
Yeah, go
narrative.
ahead with, yeah, whichever one you want to tackle, just go ahead and we'll go from there. Which one stood out to you?
Well, the first one was the Epstein thing, which is finally starting to die out, and all the silly hysteria is kind of uh, going away, which is a good thing, because it was becoming redundant in roadblocking everything else from conversations. I mean, people were talking about things that happened, you know, years ago that have already been settled, and so uh, seeing that finish up is uh, finally a good thing to move on to other things that, such as we're still funding Ukraine, we're still funding Israel, we're still in wars with no end in sight.
Yeah, and look, I get it about the whole cover up, the pedal ring, and things like that. But how many times have Black people been telling y'all that the corruption, see, they've only been focused, oh, because you guys are talking about racism and anti-Blackness, that you guys need to shut up. What we're saying is the system is rotten to the core. So it's about the system. And this is where people start crying about white guilt and all this other stuff when we're talking about the system. So by you like talking about white guilt, you're kind of caping for the system. See, they had COINTELPRO and all this other stuff. They were targeting mainly, Black organizations, but they also targeted some Native Americans and some like hippie organizations and stuff as well. But the main ire went towards Black American freedmen, right? And people were okay with that, you know, because, oh well, that's what they deserve. But what they do to us in the daytime, you've made it easier for them to come do to you in the nighttime. Or they might do it to us so fast that it's still daytime and they can come do it to you. But you didn't think that was going to happen to you. And that's what's happening now with the deportations. They're like, oh my God, what is happening? Like, what the hell do you mean? What is happening? This is not the country I know. This is what America has. You guys forget how America was founded and what it was found on the back of? Just because it's progressed from that. All they did was just find different ways to, you know, keep the same system. So when this same system says, okay, we're going to release the files, right? Release the Kraken, and then they don't. I mean, what is there to really be shocked about? Now, you can be disappointed, you can be disgusted, but shocked. Many people are shocked, and I just can't fathom this. Pam Bondi said it was on her desk. Cash Patel, like they sound like just like some whiny little hoes. Like, what did you think was going to happen? Cash Patel was put in there because he's going to be a stooge. Pam Bondi put in there because she's going to be a stooge. And the high IQs, because they said what they wanted to hear, they voted for him. But isn't that the same thing that they say what black people do? You guys voted for symbolism. Democrats told you what you wanted to hear and you voted for them. Didn't Republicans do the same thing with y'all? They did the exact same thing. We're going to a million people. They're not even close to that. We're going to release these files. Not even close to that. We're going to do this. And then Trump was like, oh, yeah, maybe we should give exception for some farm and hotel immigrant workers because no one wants to do it. Like, it's like, bro, you didn't run on that. So all this stuff, he's sprinkling in a bunch of BS and then he's making it seem like he's doing something. A lot of the stuff he's doing is going to be years out. So, you know, the benefit, like when is the benefit going to come when this is scheduled to happen 3 or 4 years from now? So it's just so much stuff that, you know, the high IQs and the model minorities, no one is calling out because they're sharing old fight videos from 1999 of some black people. Right, they're sharing Phil Donahue clips of Farrakhan. They're just bringing up all sorts of stuff. I seen one dude sharing a video of some fights, and I think it was like in South Africa, and the caption was, "We shouldn't have to live like this." I was just like, bro, do you hear how whiny you sound? Like it's just unbelievable. And instead of focusing all of, let's just say they did release the Epstein's file. That's not going to change gas prices. It's not going to change interest rates, right? You're not going to be able to suddenly afford a home because of that, right? So, you know, in a perfect world, would they release it? But what would they change? And then if we know that the system is very biased, very corrupt, very racist, anti-black, and whatever other adjective you want to throw in there, right? Why would you think that they're going to release the files? And let's just say they released them. You know, it would be redacted. Those redacted files, redacted to me means redundant, ridiculous, and a waste of time. I'll add another R, regretful, because when you read it, you'll be regretful that you even read it. You won't even find anything. And then when you do find it, it will be some sort of conspiracy rabbit hole that you can't fully confirm, that doesn't even matter, right? So you've seen how they released the MLK files, but they're redacted, and whatever they reveal in that information, nothing is going to be done. They released and said that the FBI had a hand in, you know, assassinating Malcolm X. What was done about it? No one even cares. Forget the black community. Where is the woke right? Right? They're always talking about big government. Why weren't they outraged? Because of who it happened to. They killed Fred Hampton. Like these are documented, right? So now we think that these organizations, like, no, it was only a few rogue people. So okay, cool. Let's just say that's true. What happened to those? Like, who was the head of the FBI at that time when they assassinated Fred Hampton? And what happened to him? Did he get to live happily ever after? Was there nepotism and his son got a job? You're not even supposed to ask these questions. How is that America first? So we're snowflakes because you're mad because someone called you a nigger, but they're not a snowflake when I start asking factual questions about why did the FBI sabotage the black community? Why are they not sabotaging Chinatown? They have a Koreatown. Why are they not sabotaging that? They have Little Saigon. Why are they not sabotaging that? Little Havana. Why are they not sabotaging that? Just that simple question. Then people start talking about Africa and mud huts, and you guys didn't even invent a wheel. I'm talking about America. You see, so people try to dance around the question, and then when you just keep stand and center it back, they have nothing to say. So that's why the I don't really get why people are obsessed with the Epstein files, because it's not going to reveal anything tangible. It's not going to say, if Donald Trump was in there, why would he release it? You can say you're morally righteous, but if you were the president and you knew that your name was implicated, as a vice president, I will make sure that didn't get released, right? As they all have what's they called like the presidential council. I would make sure that's not released. So even if Trump was like, "Hey, let's release it," you know that he has people around him that doesn't want it released, and if his name was in there, he would be willing to throw a bunch of other people under the bus. So people need to just kind of let this go and let this be a lesson that we live in a very racist, corrupt country. Does it mean that everybody is corrupt and everybody is racist? No, it's almost like the Sopranos family, right? That's a mob family. They're going to give birth to kids that are going to go off and go to be upstanding students. They're still part of a mob family. You can say my daughter, she's a librarian. Yeah, she's part of a librarian of the Soprano family. Like, you can't, separate, the mob ties of your family. And that's the thing with our country and our government. You can't escape the mob ties, the racism, the bigotry. It's always been baked in. You can say that I resist that because that's antithetical to what I believe, but it still doesn't mean that it's baked in the system. They still have recent stories of banks redlining and denying loans and stuff. This is, Jim Crow. It didn't just end whenever they said, okay, it's abolished. It's still been going on. You know what I mean? So
Right.
that was a long tirade to say that there's more pressing things to discuss than the Epstein's file. Fuck Jeffrey Epstein, fuck Trump, and fuck all of the MAGA people that thought that he was gonna release it.
Right. I'm going to finish it with this, with the Epstein thing. There's three main groups of people that are fighting tooth and nail for the files, whatever has it been released. Let's go with the facts. The judge didn't release it because it would release the names and the statements in the cases of women that were not proven true. And what that means by that is they're doing it to protect the women and the other people that made statements that are not factual or truth. So that's the main reason it wasn't released, because what people would find out is, oh man, the weaponization of this system was used first to him, Harvey Weinstein, and then they tried it on Diddy. But the Diddy difference is Diddy fought back. He fought back very strongly, and that's how he got away. He didn't get away. He was acquitted because none of that was true. So all the crap, all the news cases came out that it was false. So most of that majority of that crap was made up. And what happens is that right said, "Oh man, that was crazy. You know, how could they do it like that? That's how screwed up our system is. You know, they've been fighting that system, and then they think it's a conspiracy that Diddy was acquitted. This Epstein stuff. There's three groups of people that really are fighting for the files. They're the anti-Jews, anti-Israel people that want to get that person, that that cult, the crazy cult that kidnapped all them young girls. And then the second group of people are the actual like leftists for some reason that want the that want the files, and I'm not sure if they necessarily care about the files. It's more like weaponization against Trump, even though it's been proven Trump has nothing to do with Epstein other than business deals and going to social functions, just like every other person of the elite circles. And then three, sadly, the sickos that want just more cases of child abuse to read about and fantasize about. And that basically sums it up with the group that's really on edge for them files. Are three degenerate groups of people.
Got you. Yeah, I can't even hold you on that one. So, what's the next one you want to tackle?
What are you thinking about?
I would say the deportations, what I call the deportation dud. Much of it is political theater, and that's by design because Trump wants people to self-deport. So it has to appear that the deportations are extremely cruel, inhumane. That's why you're hearing things about calling ICE agents Gestapo. They're saying, oh my God, they're covering their faces. But there's a term in the hood that we call jump out boys. And those are just a bunch of undercover cops. Sometimes they have their face showing. A lot of them are plain clothes. So a plain clothes officer means that they just look just like you. They'll be wearing the same stuff as you, and they'll be chasing you. And even if they say, stop, I'm a cop, you're like, man, where's this badge or whatever? I'm in the Bay Area. So one of the cities that Trump wants to bring the National Guard to, Oakland, right? Oakland is an area, and obviously it's happened in other areas, San Francisco, probably, but people, there's car auctions, so you can buy some of the older police cars, some of the cars that police use, you could just buy and, kind of rig it up yourself to look like one. So there's been multiple people where they impersonated cops. So even without the mask, we've always had to face uncertainty with various types of law enforcement. ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. They're running around jumping out on people with guns, pepper spray. So what I'm saying is there's masked people, unmasked people, and there's people that are unannounced that when you're trying to say, man, where's your badge, whatever, they already got you hemmed up. So when this is happening to non-citizens, hey, look, I'm sure that it's sad to see. It's bad. I don't believe in a police state, but this is what we've always been telling you guys. And people were complaining. Oh man, stop complaining. Why did you comply? If you didn't do nothing, right? Why are you complaining? So how many times we've heard blue till we were blue in the face? Tim Scott, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Trump, Bush, all of these people, Obama, saying America is not a racist country. And we were saying, well, actually it is. And they were like, no, it's not. You're being woke and stop complaining. All right, fine. You know what? It's not racist. So all this shit that ICE is doing, it's not racist, right? We can't try to say this, it wasn't a racist country, but now suddenly it is. No, like you said, it's not racist. It's just business as usual. But in terms of the deportations, Trump is nowhere near his goal. He said his goal was 1 million deportations per year, which was a lofty goal, right? But he's nowhere near that. He's nowhere near the numbers of Trump, I mean, of Obama or Biden. And Biden's numbers are a bit misleading because he let in record numbers of people. So when he deported a lot of people, his numbers were inflated, but that's only because he let in so many people. You know what I mean? It's just like you dirty up a bunch of dishes, and it's like, well, I cleaned 50 dishes. Yeah, it's because you dirtied up 300 of them. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like let's not talk about the 50 dishes that you clean. Like, how many dirty dishes did you leave in the sink? So they'll focus on the number that he deported. Look, he deported millions of people. Yeah, and he let in like 30 million. So it's like kind of it's offset by the other damage that he did. But so what do you, and I have some more to chime in, but I'll let you chime in. Like, how do you, so what's your position on that? Is Trump just being a cruel boogeyman? Is there some legitimacy to what he's doing? Is he just kind of being a bonehead with how he's handling his immigration policy?
You know, I think they're definitely battling the court systems, the judges, NGO. You know, they're a lot stronger than people think. You know, the federal government is they are kind of limited in their scope versus what
Yes.
NGOs can do. So there is a lot he has to combat with. I think there's strategies to do it that would hurt his base, but it doesn't matter because he's not going for re-election anyway. Is to, you know, you want to deport, then start targeting small businesses that hire these people. You know, it's not Ford Motor Company or Tesla that's hiring illegals. You know, it's the chicken processing plants. You know, the small ones that are owned by corporations. They're you know, contractors, construction companies. You know, there's a whole lot of industries he could specifically target if he really wanted to hone down on illegal immigrants. Majority of the bad criminals, I don't really believe are working. So going into Home Depot, you know, you may get one or two every time you do, but you know, realistically, if someone's a dope dealer, they're running drugs, they're not busting their butt on a construction site. You know, they're plotting and planning other activities. You know, there's waves of immigrants that come in, and this latest group is not really the ones that are really focused on working, unlike the other groups. I think, you know, they're going after like DACA ones because they're easy targets. You know, which is kind of stupid in my eyes. You know, actually get in and root them out of the neighborhoods. You know, that's the way I feel. I think it's been run very sloppy. Obviously, they hit a lot of resistance, but there's better and smarter, more strategic ways they could do it. They're just not doing it.
Yes, no, I agree because, and some of it is part of these like liberal, and it's not just liberal, but I'm just saying these are the primarily kind of the Martha Vineyards people, right? Where they're like the bleeding hearts. They don't give a damn about Chicago, Oakland, or Baltimore, but suddenly they care about someone in Tijuana and Bogota. You know what I mean? So they're a bleeding heart, and then you say, you know what? Fine, we'll bring over a bunch of Honduran immigrants because they have it so rough over there, and there's plenty of room in Martha's Vineyard. No, that you know that they don't want them over there. So when they say that they want to get the criminals, many of them do have a criminal record. It's just that a lot of there's like a lot of how there was catch and release with Biden. They do a lot of that too with the systems as well. Oh, he's not a citizen, so they kind of just let them back into neighborhoods, or they don't really deport them out of country. They deport them to another state, right? Oh, he did the crime in New York. All right, here's a bus ticket. Go to California. That's still in a reward. That's still a reward, you know. And many of them are committing crimes and lying because they can give a generic name. Most of use like a generic identity. Oh, my name is Jose Ramirez, right? How many people could use that name uh, and just kind of go undetected, right? So just having just various undocumented people is just not okay for the safety, but not only for the work, right? Because even the bleeding hearts, we want to protect these people. All right, cool. So we should have an account of everyone's who's here so we can protect them, right? But then they want all of these rights and privileges for people. But then as soon as you say, okay, cool, let's find out where they are, where they're from, what type of character they are, that's considered a bit too far. But that's what they have. You seen these job applications lately, bro? They it's like they want to know everything about you, bro. But then suddenly when someone crosses the border, it's like all they have to say is I was seeking asylum. All right, good enough. Let you in the country. So it's like you have more harsher questions on an application for McDonald's than somebody just willy-nilly waltzing across the border. So I do agree with a moratorium on immigration. I do believe with the locking the border down, but there's this like demented fixation on the border when we know like plenty of the illegal and undocumented people are for people that are overstaying their visas. And then they're like, well, I have kids here. Yeah, but you know what the law is. So we can't apply these same standards, right? If I jaywalk, they're like, why didn't you comply? I sell a little bit of weed. Why didn't you comply? I had a gun, wasn't trying to kill anybody, but it's like I'm in a dangerous neighborhood. Well, you know the law. Why didn't you comply? Like that, there's no excuses, right? There's no explanation that's worthy. So I say, okay, fine. If that's the standard, why'd you cross the border illegally? I defeat my family. Oh, well, you should have complied with the law. Then suddenly it becomes, well, they're just trying to seek a better life. I was selling weed so that my kids could have a better life. Oh, look, you should have complied. You see what I'm saying? No one cares when you flip it. Now it's a bunch of like whites and Asians that own the weed dispensary. So someone is selling, a black dude is selling an ounce, lock them up for multiple years. Now people are selling metric tons of weed, and it's like, oh well, we signed. We what was the stroke of a pen? We changed it. Yeah, but you've changed people's lives forever. And it's like, oh, why did you comply? So for me, I'm a bit more harsh on it. It's like, hey, if you came here illegally, why didn't you comply with the laws of coming through the proper ports of entry? We can't have it both ways. We can't try to say that we need to be tough on crime, but then sympathetic for someone crossing the border illegally. It's a crime. People, it's a civil infraction. That's a crime. I don't care how you spin it, right? Bernie Madoff, you committed a crime, right? The people on the Wall Street, Wolves of Wall Street, they're committed crimes, but they try to call it blue collar crime or white collar crime. The operative word is crime. You repeatedly committing crimes means that you're a criminal. So you cross the border illegally, right? You sometimes get fake documentation. That's a crime. You know that's not legal. You're working under the table. Yeah, you're doing it to feed your family, but you know that that's not legal. That's why it's called under the table. How is that not criminality? I just named 3 criminal things, and I can name more too. So I'm just not with the whole bleeding heart shit, but I'm also not with the kind of bumbling bozo strategy that Trump has, right? With the whole political theater and him kind of trying to trump up the numbers, you know, pun intended. When it's like,
Right.
no, bro, you really haven't deported that many people like that. So just stop. Well, the last I checked in LA, right, who's been the hotbed for in the news, I think it's been like less than 10,000 deportations. My last numbers, it was like 6,000. LA has like damn near 4 million people there, bro.
That's unreal to have that many um, that are there. It's you know, unfortunately, California, you guys get saddled because a lot of people naturally want to go there.
Correct. You
So a
know, I
lot
mean,
of
sanctuary state. Yeah,
true.
they have the red carpet for
Yeah.
California and then New York. They are the ones who always push we're the nation of immigrants, and they talk about the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty was written for freedmen, and then they just turned into the give us your sick poor and all this other BS because they wanted to basically displace the population too. Because then even if you just break that down too, you have people here that you can help, and then you're reaching across the globe. Give us your sick, but you don't give a crap about the sick people. Give us your poor, but
Right.
there's poor people here that you look down on, right? And then you talk about you punish poor people for being in poor neighborhoods. You know, you defund their schools because they're in a poor neighborhood, but then you also will point to the Statue of Liberty, and they won't even mention that it was not written for non-citizens to just cross the border.
Yeah, and that's I'm with you 100%, and that's a lot of the reason I get so steamed at like people that call themselves leftists or independents that you know you're yelling Medicare for all. Okay, you haven't even got Medicare for U.S. citizens, and you're concerned about the immigrants' medical coverage. Like literally, there's a person on the left that I've had a disagreement with regarding Medicare for all, literally all. So we haven't even covered medical coverage for U.S. citizens, and you're worried about the immigrant coverage. And then everybody, I'm tired of the excuse. The U.S. destabilized their country. Okay, do you actually know how many countries the U.S. destabilized? No, we don't, because the only person that's saying this is the immigrant or a leftist journalist that has an agenda of getting communism or socialism into that person's country. So there's a lot of things on the backside that, oh, wait a minute here. You've come up with that excuse or destabilize. I have experience in South America, and I can tell you, there's a Ferrari dealership in Caracas, Venezuela. There's an Austin Martin dealership in Peru. Brazil is filled with billionaires. So I'm a little confused here. Beautiful ski resorts in Argentina and Chile. People vacation in Colombia all the time, especially Americans. Can't be that bad. That's where I've kind of eliminated all these excuses. There's very few people that come from that bad of places, and they're usually, of their own doing as far as the people they've put into power. That's what I would end with the immigration part.
Yes, no, I agree. That's man. When I hear people make that argument that you just said about, well, we've destabilized their countries. I'll show you a few faces I make. And the reason that being is because, and I don't completely discount it because I am not just a partisan hack. I try to give a objective analysis. Yes, the US is always going around meddling in foreign affairs, and imperialism is a real thing. I will concede that. However, Imperialism only is allowed to thrive and flourish with the complicity and cooperation of others, and the others being the leaders in those host nations. So people can get mad at Friedman and say, oh, you guys are always complaining and marching and all this stuff. Yeah, if we see an injustice, we stand up for it, we fight, we don't flee. These other groups, our government is mistreating us. There's gangs and all the other stuff. When there were gangs in our neighborhood, we had Black Panthers and Deacons of Defense. And now, instead of that, there's plenty of brothers that say, hey, y'all think it's a bunch of crime? Hey, step out the way, allow us to have our firearms and stuff. We'll get this neighborhood cleaned up real quick. But no, they want to over police the neighborhood, don't do anything to stop crime, and then complain about crime. And then they say, oh, well, we need more militarized police and more money. Okay, fine, we give that to you. And then now what are they still complaining about? Crime. And then they say, oh, well, you can't throw money at the problem. But guess what happens when it comes to crime? What do they want you to do? Throw money at the problem. But you guys you're failing. We've given you more gunny. You got drones, robotic dogs and stuff, and you guys still are not stopping it. How were the people, Black Panthers and other people, able to mitigate that type of stuff, right? So all of these things could be asked, but people just don't want, people just don't want for us to be able to have our neighborhoods sovereign and safe, where we don't have to deal with, foreign influence, outside influence, where we can police. There's many of people that will say, hey, we'll mitigate these situations so there won't be any crime. Or if there is crime, hey, look, man, get this person up out of here, because we want safe neighborhoods too. We want to be able to, for our kids to go and play. We didn't live in perfect neighborhoods when we were kids, but like people were leaving bikes in the lawn. You knew your neighbor and stuff. And people say, well, what changed? Well, if you import a bunch of people with, even if they look like you with the same skin tone, right, and they have different cultures, right, different customs, ethnic backgrounds and values, how are you still expecting the community to stay a, thriving Black American community? It may turn into a Black community, but it'll be like a little Haiti or a little Senegal or something like that, right? Which is fundamentally different than an American freedmen community. So all of this stuff keeps tying back into the whole immigration policy, the deportations and stuff. And this is why many of us, this is just like, we're done caping for it. We've been crashing out for it. And what have we gotten for it? And I kind of got off track, but the point I want to circle back to was that when they say, hey, we're destabilizing their countries, when the people come over here from these destabilized countries, that's not the argument they're making. The first thing they say is, I'm just coming over here to seek a better life. They don't say, I came over here because the U.S. destabilized my country. Even if that's the case, that's not what they're saying. So it's just a lot of, it's just a lot of things where they say, hey, we need to worry about this. But if they come from that country and they're not worried about it, why should I be telling them, no, you're not immigrating here for economic opportunities. You're only doing it because my country, the big bad mean U.S. government, destabilized you guys. How does it sound trying to tell someone that? No, they came over here saying, yeah, we came over here seeking a better life. They don't mention gangs, they don't mention anything. And if they do, it's because there's lawyers. You know how hard it is for you to get a lawyer, but then at the border, there's just a line of NGO.
With our
Bro,
tax dollars. With our tax
yeah.
dollars.
So I felt you when you said it's not as easy for Trump, because like you said, those NGOs, they can just be an NGO. They can put a face of the NGO. You can attack that face, but it's an NGO, so they have a bunch of minions going. So it's like their own form of a shadowy government, right?
Yeah.
And both parties fund them, right? Uh, Biden gave them massive, like hundreds of millions to these NGO. So even if Trump just cuts the water off and gives them $0, they've already been, they have the accumulation of millions upon millions upon millions for years. And now people are in a very desperate financial state. So it doesn't really take millions to get a lot of people out. You've seen some of these massive protests. I remember there was a Palestinian protest, and somebody said one of those organization NGOs, some of the Jewish ones, they were offering people like 250 to go out there, and then they had a massive protest. If you really think about it, whether you care about the cause or not, should I go out there for 250? So
Did
then
you
they
say
got,
$250?
yes.
What's the dress code? Tell me.
Yeah, no, I think this was last year. So the dress code, I think they were wearing something to show solidarity with Israel. So either I think it was white and blue, to represent the flag, something like that. But they did get a lot of people out there. So what happens is, if you say that it's paid, somebody can accuse you of anti-Semitism. If you say it was paid, then you know it could always get spun, right? It can be spun as anti-Semitism. It can be spun as a good cause. It can be spun as, hey, that's an NGO. That wasn't AIPAC. That's an NGO. That wasn't Israel. So there's always a spin on it, but no one is going to spin it anyways. They're just going to focus on the massive people out there, right? Oh, look at all these people. They're standing, and it's on the flip side too. Look at all the people standing for Palestine, but either one of them didn't. The Palestinian protests were bigger, right? Did that stop Netanyahu from bombing them to oblivion? They're still killing people every day, so
Right.
there is a lot of paid organization behind this, and a lot of the NGOs are the culprits, when it comes to like the massive protests and the media propaganda machines. There were the NGOs who funded BLM as well, and this is what I hate, especially about like the woke right, and even, conservatives and some black people. They'll talk about the corruption of BLM, which is true, right? But that's just the organization, the grassroots people that were out there that were standing up for a good cause. There was nothing corrupt about them. They were standing up for a good cause. The majority, and no one has to take my word for it, look it up. The majority of those protests were white people, because a bunch of black people knew that if we go out there and march, nothing is really going to change. And what happened? Nothing really changed. So the black people that were out there, they highlighted them. And then there were videos of like white dudes spray painting BLM. Some black dude said, "Hey, don't do that shit in my neighborhood." So it'll be like the liberals coming from their little high-rise neighborhood, but coming down to destroy property, because if it's in a black neighborhood, they're gonna assume blacks did it. And yeah, I'm not saying that people were just innocent and that blacks had nothing to do with it, but if the majority of the protesters were white, do you think that they were just all squeaky clean there? There was Antifa out there. There were
Oh
Proud
yeah.
Boys, Patriot Front. There were people out there that had Trans Lives Matter, Palestinian Lives Matter, No Lives Matter. It was just all these other factions of people out there that hijacked what the movement was supposed to be about. And then it turned into, oh, well, they bought large matches. Okay, let's just say that those three ladies, but like those three ladies weren't the only ones who got funded. Remember, they kept saying George Soros. So if you know George Soros is funding this, why are you blaming the black community? You're not blaming Jewish community, right? Because George Soros is Jewish, right? But on the flip side, if it was one black billionaire doing it, that would be the black community and black culture. But if it's one Jewish billionaire, it's just like, blame the blacks. It's like, yeah, but you just said that the Democrats were funding this, right? And they were, right? A lot of that stuff was being tracked back to Act Blue Democrats, George Soros, Jewish Democrat philanthropist, right? But somehow
Yep.
it just pointing at oh, well, it's the blacks. It's like, no, that It's not the black community that benefited from that. It's mainly like non-white people, you know what I mean? And all of these things go into it circles back to like the deportations as well, because then that now they're saying, well, we stood up for you and George Floyd, so now you should stand up for, like, George Floyd was an American citizen who was brutally killed on in his homeland. What the hell does that have to do with someone illegally crossing the border? Like, how was those two the same? Because they're saying, "Oh, well, we stood up for you," but actually, you didn't. And
They did.
for me,
They did.
yeah, marching in the street and wearing a shirt that says BLM, that doesn't mean, because okay, right now, if I buy a White Lives Matter shirt, right, and then and I create a rally, is that me standing up for the white community? Do you think Charlie Kirk will be like, yeah, bro, once you did that, you showed solidarity? No, he wouldn't care. The dude that wants that white only community in Arkansas, do you think they would be convinced? It was like, well, I stood up with you guys on January 6th. I wanted you guys pardoned. I have a J6 shirt. Would that move the needle on anything? But suddenly, if someone wore a BLM shirt, that's supposed to mean like, yeah, so now I don't have to support reparations. I don't have to close the border or anything because of I cried when George Floyd died. Like, get the fuck out of here with that.
Yeah, I
Speak on
mean,
it,
it's
BC.
yeah, yeah. I agree with you. You know, when they say we marched, no, there was a few Hispanics that marched alongside. We meaning, oh yeah, those were my people because they were brown or Mexican. That, you know, that these people didn't march at all. The people that are saying they did. A lot of these leftist groups, you know, they're the ones that came in from the suburbs. You know, they came in from the suburbs, went ballistic, and then went back to mom and dad's vacation homes for the summer. Um, these kids, you know, most of them are white, vandalizing, breaking windows, burning cars, couches, wherever they're seeing to cause destruction and chaos, and then leaving. If you look at a lot of the BLM riots, you know, some of them were in majority white cities. How many black folks live in Seattle, Washington, or Portland, Oregon? You know, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Wisconsin. You know, so Detroit didn't have any issues, and there was peaceful protests, but they were also led by Black Americans in the Detroit area, and they had a good relationship with the police department there. And that's what we should talk about next time. I think is better policing strategies all around for the U.S. because I think it's not talked about. I think if we talked about in a more creative way, in my opinion.
Yes, no, I agree. And the creative way is just not being bigoted or anti-black. That's the creative way. We can disagree. I mean, FBA has a culture of roasting, right? You know, of playing the dozens and stuff. That's because we were called all sorts of the spook who sat by the door, nigger, jungle bunny, all sorts of stuff. So it's like the dominant society was calling us all sorts of names. We internalized some of those names to our detriment, and to some, we used them as a way to empower ourselves, you know. So we would crack on the people, but always bring up the scene. uh and I wish I had the scene that I'll try to find it while I'm talking, but there was a scene in the movie Gran Torino. Clint Eastwood, he goes into a shop with his buddy, another white guy, and they're just ragging on each other, calling each other's all sorts of offensive
The
epithets. And
barbershop.
yes, and he's with this Asian kid, and the kid is looking like, you guys talk to each other like that? And he's like, yeah, you know, I've known him for X amount of
Polish
years.
jokes.
Yeah, right. But other people of other cultures, they, you know, because there's this one thing that people, you know, like some immigrants will say, or people that have an immigrant background, you guys called us African booty scratchers, like that. They'll be holding on to that. It's like, I got called that, and I'm not African, never been to Africa, probably never will go to Africa. It was just something because, you know, obviously the Nick Fuentes types, they always try to associate us to Africa. You know, we know that we have African ancestry, etc., but, you know, we know that we're not African. So we didn't just say that, oh, this person is African, so let's call them that. We would call that to people who were freedmen, you know. So it was just like a joke. And that was actually very mild, like African booty scratcher nigger. Like like nobody was getting lynched called an African booty scratcher. So it's like there's really no comparison when it comes to like the history of atrocities associated with that specific slur. So it's like we've endured the worst slur. We endure it every day on social media, but all these other groups, they get so sensitive, you know, when you know, when people like challenge them or start roasting them, you know, respectfully, you know what I mean? So or, you know, it may be kind of disrespectfully, but it is respectful compared to the words that have been, you know, used towards us. So that's kind of part of our culture. But I will say even too, like, you know, a lot of the wasp, you know, they were the ones calling us all those names and shit too. So there was an iconic scene where it was like Richard Pryor. You remember that? It was him and I forgot the comedian, but they were going back and forth calling each other slurs. Now, you know, the one that Richard couldn't trump was the N word. Like they're going back calling each other names, but it was just humorous, right? And some other cultures of people, they can't stand that because they're used to calling us names just out of straight disdain, vitriol, and hatred. But we'll call you a name and then laugh at you, you know what I mean? Or
Right.
you know, and they'll say, you goddamn niggers, okay, you fucking hillbilly snaggle too, you know what I mean? Like we'll say something back, and then it you goddamn monkey, go back to Africa. We'll go back to Europe. You know what I mean? You snow ape. You see, like we're used to
Yeah.
like fine, we'll crack back. Like you say, it's the racist shit, fine. But sometimes people say, see, they're being racist too. It's like, nah, they weren't being racist. It's like that. There's a difference between racist and roasting. You can use racist language, but me just calling you these slurs, like I didn't affect you in any way. But on the flip side, if you're calling me that, you know what I mean, and then start making accusations, right? Like that N word did this. Now that's a beyond a bit roasting and shit. And I remember I think Paul Mooney and others were talking about like that, like, hey, we okay ragging on each other, but as long as it don't turn into because I'm an N word, now I'm being racially profiled. But if it just goes to us roasting each other back and forth using harsh language, hey, we're all for that. The issue is that you can call me an N word and shoot me, and it's not a hate crime. If I say anything close to considered an epithet, and there will be no doubt that it will be a hate crime. So that's just where the double standard and disparity comes in. But I just know other cultures, they're so fragile. They were during the whole Stop Asian Hate, it's like there were barely any hate crimes committed towards them. Like when you look at the numbers, the hate crimes against black people was like in the triple digits, you know, and they weren't even close towards that. But there was some black females in San Francisco, I believe it was, and they had got into it with some Asians, and they were saying, "Man, go back to your own country. Like, why are you here?" You know, like saying things like that. That was considered a hate crime.
Oh, I remember that. I remember that video. That was a couple years ago, right?
Yes. So you see what I'm saying? Like we've been used to go back to Africa and all the stuff. That's not considered a hate crime. So I think that kind of disturbs some people too as well. Uh, because we'll ramp up the language, and then the language will be considered xenophobic. But now we kind of grew up roasting each other with the harshest language. Some of my coolest buddies are battle rappers. Battle rappers, they say crazy shit. I'll shoot your kid, I'll slap your mama. And then after the battle, they'll shake hands, smoke a blunt, and have a beer with each other because it's just wrestling. It's like a form of wrestling, right? Wrestling people, you'd be like, damn, Undertaker really hates him. It's like, no, he doesn't. Like this, like that's his best friend. So that's kind of how it is with our culture. So it makes other people disturbed. Well, why do y'all even say this word? Well, we kind of repurpose the word and it means this to us, but you outside not respecting it, and looking at it as just something to ridicule. Now that's where people get defensive, and it's not about sensitivity, it's just about disrespect. And other groups that they don't tolerate any disrespect, but then they want us to tolerate it, right? Like I said, Asians don't even want you saying go back to China. That's unacceptable. But then many of them will fight for for people to be using the N-word and say, well, you guys say it to yourself. It's like, yeah, it's a lot of harsh things that you guys say to yourself in Chinese. Should I learn Chinese and start saying that? No, people wouldn't say that. If you've been around Italian people, they have a lot of harsh language towards each other, but they love each other so that no one considers it like they're, you know what I mean? Like they are being super disrespectful. Like you've seen all of these mob movies and the Irish mafia and shit. Is it all are all the families just all sweet and peaceful, or are they cussing each other out and talking smack to each other? That's fine because that's their family and they love each other and they're going to get through it. But if you go try to talk smack to their family, it's going to be a whole different story, bro. And that's pretty much what people are saying. Like, yeah, we might roast and do all this stuff. It's just because we're coming from a different place that you are. And all of this stuff keeps tying back to the whole immigration policy, deportations, and everything. Because when our language is harsh and we are saying things like, hey, hold your own nuts, why didn't you comply? Even though that's the mild version of the sentiment, people just get really disturbed and infuriated that we're just not laying down to be society's doormat anymore. But yeah, go ahead, BT. I know I touched on a lot of stuff, but
no, you're right. And the way our grandfathers, our grandfathers worked together in plants, and were they said terrible things back and forth to each other. But at the end of the day, if my grandfather's black coworker had a flat tire in the parking lot, he'd help him change it. There. Our grandparents got along pretty decently, at the workplace when it was all blue collar. So,
yeah, no, I hear you. I cut out a little bit, but I heard exactly what you were saying. And that's what I was saying in terms of the differences, because even though there may have been, like a segregated neighborhood, we actually, and that's why there's a lot more respect for kind of the down south, down south Watts, because I don't really know about the newly immigrated WASP. I mean, well, they're not really WASP, but like for instance, that Cincinnati incident, right? Those white people that were fighting were Russian. So they were going around just like calling the black people N-words and wanting to pick a fight and things like that. And I'm not saying that there aren't any homegrown bigots like that, but we've been around each other for so long that many of us have kind of gotten past that, and that's what I was thinking of saying about the words. Where I mean, it still happens. It happens every day. I get called that every day on Twitter, but I just get more creative with the words that I say back. So now they're calling me that, and then of course they're just gonna try to take it back to Africa, and I just bring it here because I noticed that too. When I leave it here, many people, they have to take it somewhere else because my lineage stretches further here than theirs, and they want to try to take credit for all of the Anglo accomplishments. I'm like, dude, you're Bosnian or you're Russian. You see what I mean? You're Serbian, like so Ukrainian. I've seen all of these people, and then I'm like, damn, there's some homegrown biggest, but then when I start digging into a lot of the biggest, I'm seeing like Canadian, all sorts of foreign backgrounds. Where it's like, I mean, are you guys trying to like be accepted? It's kind of like what the Irish and Italian did when they were being called guineas. Irish were called white niggers and shit. So they had to, okay, cool, we need to ramp up the anti-blackness to be assimilated into whiteness and stuff. But the Russians and many of these people, they're already part widely accepted as white. So they don't really need to do all these extra antics and things like that. But I see there is like a lot of that cultural divide as well. Because when we were growing up in these factories, like you said, with your dad or your uncles or whatever, cracking jokes on each other, it wasn't like African blacks and white Russians doing that. You know what I mean? It was a specific demographic, a specific lineage of people doing that. You know what I mean? So there was, as much as there have been a level of disdain, there was a level of respect and trust as well, because it became a social pecking order, whether people did or were comfortable with it or not. It became that where people was like, hey, we became with the don't start none won't be nothing, right? All right, fine. Hey, look, we know the whites don't want us on that side, but look, man, I'm earning good money, and you know what? Hey, man, this hillbilly ain't that bad after all. You know what I mean? It was that kind of thing. We were used to like living around each other. As to where you get over here, like California and stuff, is super super segregated. But it's like it's supposed to be this bastion of progressivism, but like they're more racist than like some down south snaggletooth, what I mean, dude who's grew up in this podunk town. I'd prefer to be around him because at least if he was gonna call me a slur, I can respect that more, right? I don't really respect someone that's saying, "We got your back, we love you, buddy," and then like you're stabbing me in the back. No, just leave with the disrespect up front so I can approach you accordingly. But you find out that like a lot of those like bigoted people down south, a lot of them are just kind of misunderstood and ignorant. Like a lot of them are really low IQ, so like they are like genuinely ignorant, and some are just genuinely hateful. But even some of the hateful ones are more respectful than an Orange County like straight liberal. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean it's to the point now where you're pinpointing exactly what I've been talking about, is the difference of the people, like the guy that's 70, 80 years old, or 50 to 60, 70, that's lived in a rural town, that's never left rural town, that's only been around whites, is going to have a certain attitude. He's watched the news, he's heard a story or two about one of his cousins that went to a big city and blah blah blah. You kind of expect it. But what I think is worse is, in this day and age, with the information and the education and what's available on social media about what's being acceptable, I kind of feel, if you're in the ages of 18 to 50, you should know better. You should know better. You shouldn't carry that attitude, because if you are racist, even if your daddy or grandfather was racist, you kind of indoctrinated yourself. You formed that opinion with the plethora of available information, and that's at your disposal through the computers and online and through TV and media. If you're a hardcore racist now, you've actually indoctrinated yourself, and that's even worse, in my opinion. There really is an excuse for the 20 or 30-year-old. You know, that's the way I feel about that.
I concur. I mean, we are in the information age, so you can't say you didn't know because, I mean, you can say that you didn't know. The thing is, saying that you didn't know is unacceptable because if you didn't know, why didn't you find the answer? Right now, I could say 2 + 2 is 6, right? How, if you don't know the answer, you just have to take my word for it. And if you say, I'm not going to take his word for it, then how are you going to find the answer? You have to do the work yourself to confirm, oh, actually, 2 + 2 is 6. Or, no, he was wrong. 2 + 2 is 4. You know, you can't just rely on people to whatever they say, even if you trust them, you know. So if someone is saying something and then you say, well, this person said that, well, did you check it? Because now there's all sorts of AI apps programmed into your phone. They have advanced search engines. You know, people like to say Google that, but that's not the only search engine. They got Yahoo, Bing, DuckDuckGo. So you have various search engines, you know, so you can get the Google results. Then you can get the Microsoft Edge results. So, oh, you know, you can have a conversation with AI and say, just ask random stuff. What impact does racism have on the black community? What, how much is racism costing America? Forget the black community. How much is racism costing America? All of these questions you can ask AI, right? Because people like to use Grok. Look, Grok proved this. Okay, ask Grok this. Is there systemic racism? Okay, ask Grok, when did it stop? Okay, ask Grok about all of the racial massacres here. Okay, ask Grok about redlining. You see, like, people could use the information for that, but they don't want to. So now it's not about you knowing, is that you don't want to know. And since you don't want to know, that means you're willfully ignorant. So this conversation is really over because you don't really want to learn. So what is the point of talking? You want to be indoctrinated. You want to promote your talking points, but you don't want to promote the truth. You don't want to get to the bottom of it. You don't want to even get solutions, because whining and saying this community does this, okay, what's the solution? Well, we're just going to blame that community again. Okay, so what's the solution to that? Well, I'm probably going to make some more content and blame them again. Okay, so what's the solution? More content blaming them. So it's just a cycle of blame and content and consistent. They did this and they did that. I always say this too, right? Because people like to say, well, the blacks are the violent thugs and the dregs of society. And so think of it like this: as people love their sports, right? If there was a team in last place, should they get more coverage than the team that's in first place? The team that's consistently in the playoffs and winning the championship. So if we're so at the bottom and doing bad educationally, spiritually, health wise, physically, and everything, why are we constantly being talked about? Let us be the bottom feeders and the retards that people really think that we are. Shouldn't people be talking about how great the Asians are? Shouldn't people be talking about we love Hispanics so much that we want to kiss the ground that they walk on and drink their bathwater? Shouldn't more of the conversations be about that? Instead, it's the blacks, it's the blacks, it's the blacks. And then finally, when the blacks say, hey, look at all the shit y'all did, it's the Jews, it's the Jews, it's the Jews. It's like, come on, bro. Like, I can't respect that. Where's the accountability and personal responsibility in that? Go ahead, BT.
Right. I'm gonna end it like this. You know, and your analogy was perfect. You know, why do we get so much coverage if we're so bad? And I'm sorry, my microphone keeps cutting off, but that, I'll just end it with this. If they're so bad, why are you attending football games? Why are you watching movies? Why are you listening to their music? What? Why? It's one of those things where there's a double standard that these people go by. And it's just sad that they're unwilling to have great engagement in conversations like this, that complain all day, and then at the end of the day, what do? They're cheering for their football team or their basketball team. It just have a conversation with regular people
who's mainly
that's
black,
what
like
I
you said. They're cheering for a team who's mainly black, like they were crapping on Shador Sanders, but now they have him fourth string, and it's mainly like his biggest fans are white people and shit. But it's crazy because a lot of them talk about black culture and fatherless home, and Shador Sanders is none of that. He grew up in a two-parent home. He grew up in above middle class. He grew up wealthy, right? And they're still trying to find ways to crap on him. But like you said, most of these leagues, I mean, the most popular ones, are dominated by blacks, and baseball would be as well, but it's like they make a concerted effort to get more like overseas Hispanics. David Justice had talked about this, like they'll go to like Cuba or Brazil and build and this is the MLB, and they'll do it with our taxpayer dollars, right? They'll go over there and build a high level facility to train Brazilians and Cubans and the dark ones mainly, who could barely speak English. And it's like, oh, we're the saviors and giving them so much opportunity, but they won't make a baseball center in the hood. And then it's like, oh, well, why more black people don't play baseball? Well, with a football, you can just get a football and throw it, right? But with a baseball, you need a good mat. I mean, you need a good bat, right? You need good cleats. You need a good glove. You know what I mean? You need a field to practice at, right? So it's a lot of things that go into it that people don't care. And then if they built those facilities, you think it wouldn't be a bunch of young boys in the hood, not on the corner, but like trying to learn baseball or trying to learn a different sport. So my thing is, just peel the mask off. Just say that you don't want us in that sport. Just say that you don't want these kids to have other opportunities. But some of them, they like leaving them in kind of destitute conditions because it makes a lot of the best players, right? When you look at a lot of those players, they love players for them to say, oh, he came from a single mom house and he was, dodging crackheads and bullets, you know what I mean? And then the NFL full of white men saves them. That's kind of the story that they want to go with, versus, these kids, they're getting these NIL deals, and some of them are coming in already millionaires. So even if their career fails, they're like, all right, I'm a millionaire. So they want them to come in with the least amount of leverage. So that's kind of the whole thing that they did with Shador Sanders. But I'm saying all of this to say that this country could be, I mean, this already is the greatest, but it's a declining empire, and most of it is just due to just anti-blackness and bigoted. I'm not saying that, we are the only group that's hated. I'm just only got it. No one else is speaking up for us. So I have to primarily speak up for my group. You know what I mean? Only time other groups mention us is to be like, oh, look, George Floyd. And oh, yeah. Help us with this Asian hate bill. You know what I mean? So I have to speak up primarily for my group. But, there have been studies that show that racism is costing the country trillions, bro, because look at all the stuff that we're creating under harsh conditions, under horrifying conditions. If we were able to say, like, we're never going to catch white people in the terms of wealth, and when they say the racial wealth gap and stuff like that, all we're saying is that we want to have a better quality of life. That's literally all people are saying. We're never going to be able to surpass whites in the terms of wealth, but we don't need to, right? So when people are like, we just don't even want y'all to have anything. Instead, they'll rather sell hundred thousands of acres to China, to foreign nationals and shit, and then say you guys shouldn't have anything. So this country is just selling each other up the river, and people are okay with it happening to us, but they would talk about the trickle down economy. We are the canaries in the coal mine. So what they do to us in the morning, they'll come do to you in the afternoon. They're not even going to wait to the night time. So people should be mindful about that. And if we're going to be America first, which I know is just a bumper sticker, but I mean, I truly believe in that, not in the racist Nick Fuentes sentiment. But yeah, let's truly be America first. See, I'm not of the mind of here freedmen, because the reparations, that's a debt owed for unpaid labor, but I still support universal policies that help other people. I'm not about get reparations and fuck everybody else because you ain't part of this lineage. No, like we are that these are separate issues to compartmentalize. I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of people in Appalachia that probably hate my guts, like, but I don't think they should be abandoned, and that you should just leave them you know uh to be disenfranchised. You know what I mean? The welfare capital in the world is in Kentucky, Owsley, Kentucky. Anyone can look this up. It's 99% white, and it's about 99% of them are on welfare. And maybe they're probably crying now because Trump was cutting a lot of that stuff. But there's a bunch of poor white neighborhoods that need help. You know what I mean? That's not going to be reparations. That's going to be economic investment. So sometimes people try to conflate it. And it's like, well, I'm poor too. So where's my reparations? Like, bruh, like you weren't lynched, and y'all can go down the list of atrocities. There wasn't a red line, debt peonage, sharecropping, a highway commission act where they run highways directly through your neighborhood. That stuff didn't happen to you. You weren't targeted because of your racial breakdown, but you have been economically deprived and destabilized. So I'm all for helping people, whether it's a UBI or whatever form of sustainable thing that we can do, even if it's just like a temporary stimulus solution. I'm all for that. But like, when I say that, then people will be like, oh, okay, they can get on board. It's just they won't get on board of my lineage getting something specific. They don't care if illegal immigrants get something specific. They don't care if Jewish people, Asian people. It's just only if the freedmen get something specific, then everyone has to come out the woodwork. Tethers are coming out, Sambos and Coons. Well, we don't deserve that. Stop begging. All of the other bigots come out with the low IQ, and you guys didn't build the wheel. So all of this stuff is just holding the nation back. Meanwhile, China is not being held back. You can say that they're authoritative and shit, like, yeah, they're not holding their people back like that. You can say they're oppressing their people. You can say that they're doing all of this human rights violations, right? Who the fuck are we to talk about human rights violations? Look how we're treating our prisoners, right? I can guarantee you Chinese prisoners get better, they get better treatment over there. You know why? Because the ones that they don't care about, Chinese people, they get them up out of there. Delete, you feel me? Yeah, no need for prison.
Right.
And then suddenly when you see their prisoners, it's like they're truly reformed, right? Their prisoners get reformed. Ours is recidivism because our prisons are hellhole and is designed to keep people back. It's that prison pipeline for you to keep coming back. You see what I'm saying? So all of this stuff is connected, bro. So I just say we got to just stop. When I say we, I'm talking about us as a society, as a nation. We have to stop with the bigotry. We have to focus on our nation first, truly America first. I'm not against helping other nations, but it should be helping other nations in a sensible manner, right? We should be able to see the fruits of our investment. Sending 87 million to Pakistan for gender studies, that does nothing for me. That does nothing. What about Chicago? What about Oakland? Okay, cool. I'm sure if they had 87 million dedicated towards preventing um, buildings being dilapidated and crime. I'm sure they can do something with that. Instead, you want to send it to Pakistan for gender study. So fine if you want to do that, but just admit that you don't give a crap about the nation and that you want to see certain groups fail. Just stop pretending, because then you'll get better results. If people actually pull the mask off and start saying the N-word more with ER and Santa, I encourage that, not because that's what I want to hear, but that what will finally wake people up to what the country truly is and never stop being. Then people can unite, right? People can say, oh, look, man, damn, this bigot is making white people look bad. I want to stand up against that. And then naturally people are going to be like, cool, because I disagree with that too. And then people will unite against, all forms of bigotry, and then we can become to make solutions. I'm not with here, let's unite against this and then go back all into our segregated enclaves and never see each other. That's fine. America is segregated. It's fine that we live in segregated enclaves, but we should be advocating for more economic inclusivity. I'm not gonna say, hey, I want more blacks to live in white neighborhood. Nah, that shit don't even really matter, bro, because we grew up living segregated, like I said, and a lot of us got along. Well, really, blacks were segregated because whites could always come into black neighborhoods. You know what I mean? Like they were coming to Negro League
Right.
games, juke joints, all the shit. So the segregation was kind of like really only one way. But with that being said, all we're saying is like, bro, let us build some things and not economically sabotage us. When we're saying, look, we just need a little bit of economic investment from the government, it's not asking for a handout. It's asking so we can do self-determination. Once we are winning, once freedmen are winning, the country is winning. But some of these other groups, and I don't really have anything against immigrants, I just have to say it what it is. Look up how much remittance is. That literally Mexico, I think they got like 60 plus billion just in remittances alone of their workers, many of them undocumented, sending money back. Nigeria got like 20 billion. So the open borders and illegal immigration is beneficial for many other nations, but at what expense to the native population, to the communities already here. So I'm just against all this stuff, but I'm down to unite with whoever. Doesn't matter your racial makeup, ethnic background, but you do have to just denounce the bigotry at the door, and you got to be, willing to work for a greater cause. You know what I mean? And that's pretty much it. You know what I mean?
We got to end it.
You kind of cut out BT. You got
to end it with that because you just crushed it.
Right on, like, yeah, because that was a bit of a tirade, because it was really no specific direction, but all of these things are correlated and have some level of intersectionality. But we will be doing more of these. I think this was a fruitful discussion, and I thank you for your time, BT. You've been extremely gracious, and we're gonna go ahead and shut her down, and we'll be back with another one. Discussions with them, dude. B-Eazy, that dude, BT, hitting on the topics, the discussion, saying stuff that your favorite podcaster and YouTubian content creator is just too petrified to say. But this is how we do it.
Go big or go home.
Yes, sir. So that's it, BT. Man, thank you for stopping by, bruh. And we'll have to set up another one soon, you know what I mean? So it's always good once we have the topics, because I like to have just the topics as a basis, and then we kind of just do our free flow discussion from there. So I thought it was pretty dope.
For sure. It worked out well. I'll cook up